Hello, I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live, where you'll find us airing our views on the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Aaron, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Frank?
Well, I'll keep my personal health issues to myself. Anyway, all right. So,
They make a cream
uh,
for that.
so, there. Oh my goodness, what just happened? My Word document just disappeared.
Oh goodness.
Doesn't like me. All right, listen. Let's start with the Canadian Football League and the the Bombers win over the Ticats. Well, we talked about these on. Oh no, we didn't. Okay, the Bombers beat the Ticats.
Yeah. So this is a Grey Cup final rematch. The Blue Bombers managed to remain undefeated with a 26-12 win over the Hamilton Ticats on Friday night at IG Field. Um, the game was actually held up by rain. Uh, I'm not sure if you tried to watch the game live or not, but there was a lot of
Yep,
filler stuff that was going on. But
yep.
yeah, the Bombers are
They
now
were having
3-0.
technical difficulties too.
Yeah, it was a whole mess of a situation. But yeah,
Absolutely.
Willie Jefferson had a great game with a 30-yard pick six in the fourth, while Colaros completed 21 to 32 for 302 yards. So that was a good night for him.
Montreal took Saskatchewan out 37-3, and then you got your Edmonton Calgary, your Alberta battle.
Yeah, the Edmonton and Calgary game was actually pretty awesome. Not gonna lie, back and forth and back and forth. Calgary got blanked in the first quarter. Edmonton was up 6-0 at that point, but they managed to claw back to 30-23. Bo Levi Mitchell was a game time decision, and even for a game time decision, he threw for over 300 yards and a touchdown. So, you know, something seems to be going right for him, and apparently, rumors of his demise were greatly exaggerated.
And then, of course, there was the BC Lions rolling over the Argos forwards, backwards, forwards, backwards. Their transmission was working fine.
Yeah, this was one of those where the Argos just got absolutely steamrolled. The fact that we couldn't score any points in the second half, I think, was a bad harbinger. Plus, being down 20-3 at the half was definitely not a good sign. But it was 436 yards by Rourke, which set a CFL record now, which is the most passing yards thrown in a single game by a Canadian. If he keeps this up, I know it's only been a few games, but if he keeps this up, there's going to be a lot of records that are going to be falling.
Is it possible the Colorado Avalanche will be able to win the cup again, Aaron? Do you think they have the key components and are quite capable of not losing too much and maintaining their throne status?
I think it's entirely possible if they want to run it back again with exactly the same crew, they can. They're not experiencing a lot of the salary cap issues that other teams are. They've been able to work under that relatively easily. The fact that they did actually have an opportunity to try to run it back again next year if they didn't succeed this year, I think was part of the key to their success. Most of the key components in their core are locked in, at least for the next couple of years, which means that they could definitely take advantage of that.
And what always happens with Stanley Cup champions is there's always a couple of really real stars. Cale Makar proved to be that. In fact, he came away with a lot of hardware this year and two very important pieces with the Stanley Cup: the cup itself, and of course that thing with the Maple Leaf building on it.
Yeah, so it was great to see him win the Conn Smythe. It was great for him to have the cup. It was great for him to get the Norris Trophy. All of that combined for a stellar season. When we were talking about running it back, the key components to their core are all coming back next year. Rantanen is signed until 24-25. Landeskog is signed until, past 27-28. Nate McKinnon is there for another year at 6.3. JT Compher's there for another year at 3.5. Logan O'Connor's there until 2024-2025. On defense, McCarr is locked up until 2026-2027. Johnson, Samuel Girard, Devin Taves, they're all back. They're all coming back again. So this is basically, hey, if we can't do it this year, we can try again next year.
Yeah, and they'll have to bring in a couple of pieces, like they did this off season. Sorry, during the regular season in
Yeah.
the free not free agency. My goodness. Anyway, the Avalanche gives Stan Kroenke his third championship since February. I know the NLL. What's the third one?
The LA Rams.
Oh, okay. He owns them too.
He owns them too. So wins the Super Bowl, wins the National Lacrosse League, and now wins the NHL. So I think about the only thing left for him to do would be for him to buy the Rockies and see if he can win an MLB title now.
Uh, I guess that kind of puts a little thought into ownership being a factor in winning championship.
Oh, most definitely. I mean, he's committed to his teams. You know, he's got the ability to bankroll them to the hilt, but the fact that he's invested as heavily as he has into making sure that these are championship teams, I think, speaks volumes to his desire to be an owner.
So does that speak to the fact that there are owners out there that have owned teams for a very long time and not won anything?
Well, I mean, a lot of teams are a steady source of revenue. So uh, here's the thing: in addition to the Rams and the Mammoth and the Avalanche, Kroenke also owns Arsenal, the Denver Nuggets, and the Colorado Rapids. So the Nuggets aren't going to be able to help him out this year, but the Rapids have a shot at winning an
Yeah,
MLS title. I mean, they're sitting
they're
in
playing
10th on the
pretty.
table right now. So sorry about that.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Um, the other thing is a Canadian team again didn't win a Stanley Cup championship, and some people blame the ownership of the Canadian teams. I I can't disagree. But I also what we saw during the Stanley Cup final for the first time, Hockey Night in Canada or Sportsnet finally took a stance that was one that needed to be. They played newsmaker as opposed to strictly entertainer and or passive accomplice to the National Hockey League. In other words, they saw something wrong and they said something about it. They said something about it after the Rangers lost to Tampa with the holding and all that stuff that Tampa does. Then at the end here in the Stanley Cup final, the complaining by the Tampa Bay team, too many men on the ice. They had 7 guys on the ice. Colorado had 6. Um, then there's the penalties they didn't get called against them. Aaron, is it in your opinion? It's not. I don't. I'll tell you mine, and then you give me yours. It's not about. It's not really about trying to help a team, the National Hockey League. It's about making mistakes that shouldn't happen, and the way that they're massaged, how easily the National Hockey League is played. And by the National Hockey League, I mean the referees. We saw it with the Leafs, Tampa Bay raising their hand every time the Leafs did something to say he deserves a penalty. We saw it in New York with the Rangers. We saw it again in the Stanley Cup final. And then, worst of worst, we saw the coach try to do that. I think that's the contributors when the National Hockey League doesn't have the spine against certain teams to say to them, like if the Leaf team did that, they're a nice punching bag. The league has in past, if you're a Leaf fan, you know that when the Leafs got a little aggressive physically, the league clamped down on them, unlike they did to other teams that play like that. So what I'm asking you, I guess, is to what extent do you agree, if you agree at all?
Well, it does seem that there is a trend um, of certain teams from certain countries winning. And this, I mean, this is something that isn't exactly a secret. I think the commissioner's disdain for Canadian fans and Canadian teams is well known at this point. Um, just based on the fact that it's extremely difficult to try to get an all-star game, which should be a marquee event. It's
Absolutely.
hard to get Canadian teams into outdoor games, which are supposed to be marquee events, whether we're talking the outdoor classic or heritage classic games,
That they
anything like that.
started. that Canadians started in
Oh
Edmonton.
yeah. Oh yeah, and the league was like, well, thank you, we like this idea very much. We're going to have Los Angeles play Chicago, and
And
then we're going to have
here's
Florida
another
play
one.
Chicago.
Here's one I can add. Here's one I can add to you. Since home time hockey is gone now, when it started, they had American teams playing against each other during Canadian home time hockey show. I mean,
Yeah,
if that doesn't speak to it, and then they have, the contest. They've changed it after I think some people finally got upset, where they had the what is it, the craft
Hockeyville.
Centerville
Mm-hmm.
Hockeyville, yeah, Centerville Hockeyville thing, where you have two teams go play in a Canadian town that wins the right to do so. They bring two America. At the beginning, they brought American teams in, and ironically, they brought Arizona in almost to say, "Come on, let's make these guys feel like they have some fans." And that it's all those little things that Bettman and the National Hockey League that have done that you quite intelligently mentioned that are little. They're just little. They're little blocks,
Yeah.
in a foundation and in an edifice that clearly demonstrates that Canadian hockey fans come in second. And here's what I'm going to say about the reason I didn't go with the ownership right away. The owners have something that fans don't. They have a profit line. The
Yeah.
fans don't. All the fans have is the glory that their team brings to their town, their hometown. That's all they got. Or their country, or their province, or their whatever, their fan base, right? And that's what I hold against the ownership of the National Hockey League, of the teams in Canada, because they don't fight hard enough. And by fight hard enough, they don't win the Stanley Cup on behalf of Canadian fans. And it to me, it's kind of shameful because they have a guaranteed reason to profit, pretty much a lock, right? To
Mm-hmm.
profit. They don't have to do. We talk about the Argos all the time, in trouble because the team doesn't get the support, the advertising, the promotion, all that stuff. Hockey doesn't need to be promoted in
No, I,
Canada.
honestly, hockey in Canada is a license to print money.
It sure is.
And the fact that it's not recognized as the economic engine that drives the National Hockey League is frustrating to no end.
Now,
Um,
hopefully, but I don't think it'll happen. I think it was an easy situation for Hockey Night in Canada and Sportsnet to do in doing what they did as far as calling out the Tampa Bay Lightning. I just wonder whether eventually, it took them, Aaron, I think it was 12 years to acknowledge that no team in Canada won the cup since '93.
yeah, it's been a while.
Right?
It's been a while.
It only recently in the last couple of years has Hockey Night in Canada mentioned, oh, by the way, the Canadian team hasn't won the Stanley Cup since '93. So, and that's the kind of thing where, I'm not talking about conspiracy here. It's not about conspiracy. It's about standing up for Canadian hockey fans, and it's there's a battle there. You got a contract with the National Hockey League. You got a bully like Gary Bettman, who clearly has a history, and people know that he's the kind of guy that's kind of a little bully, and he bullies people around. And it's not hard to, I'm not saying what he does is illegal or whatever, or even, well, I won't say immoral. It could be immoral because I don't know the stuff. I have stuff that I know from history that he's done, which to me is immoral and should be illegal, but it isn't because it's only sports. It's not. Conflict of interest is a big thing, but I have to say that Colorado deserved it. They played really well. The only game I watched live at all was that last game, and they proved something, Aaron, that if you're a Leaf fan or an Edmonton Oilers fan or a Calgary Flame fan, I'm referring to the teams that made the playoffs, is that when it came time to shut down the other team, they didn't do it. Colorado did.
Yeah, no, and I find it interesting, and you might find this interesting too. The road to the Stanley Cup Finals always seems to go through Toronto. Just bear with me here,
I
because
know, I know, I know. Hey, listen, you sound just like all those people go, yeah, but there's Canadian players on that Stanley Cup champion team.
yeah, okay,
Well,
no, you know
but
what?
go ahead. I'll
Honestly,
let you
though,
have your self pat on the back moment.
Canadian, I would like to see a Canadian-based team. I think it's great. The Canadian players still make up approximately 60% of the league. Cool.
Right.
However, there's so many more fans that would be served by having an actual Canadian based team win. It's a
Well,
boon to the local economy. As it is, like I said, the Canadian teams plow so much money into this league, it's not even funny. You know, yeah, cool,
they're
there's
gonna have
Canadians,
to
but
do something about officiating. They're going to have to do something about um, because I and it's not just Toronto. It's Canadian teams in general that I don't think get a fair shake. But that's neither here or neither there. But one thing I can say, Aaron, up until the last few years, one thing we didn't have on the Canadian teams in the National Hockey League were real stars. That changed. You know, the
yeah,
Canadian teams have some of the best players in the world. You roll back 10 years ago, and nah, that wasn't true. All you had to do was look at Team Canada.
yeah,
So over the
and
years, right?
you look at the Canadian teams now, there are genuine bona fide stars that deserve the
Yeah.
attention, that deserve more
So at
attention than they
least the fans are being treated by real talent, if that's any consolation. But like you, I'd like to see a Canadian team win it. It really doesn't matter which team to me. Well, maybe it does a little.
I
Never
mean,
mind.
I have
I
my
don't know.
preferences. Let's be honest here. I have my preferences,
Yeah,
but you know,
that's why I was saying what I was saying. And I was looking at the numbers. 4.5 million people watched in the U.S. watched the Stanley Cup, the last game. That's it's a very poor number for.
compared to 2021 and 2019, that's more than 9 times as many viewers. Think about
Yeah,
that just for a second. So you had just around 400,000 people watching in 2019 and 2021. The fact that it was on ESPN, I think, and ABC helped them get to 3.7 million viewers,
well,
which
they
I
were
think is
all the games were on television, not
yeah.
cable. Like they were on cable as well, but they were on television. All the games were on television, which matters. Sticking with hockey, a couple of advertisers, Bank of Nova Scotia or Royal Bank, sorry, they're backing out of sponsoring Team Canada, the junior team, and they rolled out a statement. I don't know if you saw. I'm sorry. Did I? Yeah. No, I didn't see it here. Okay. I didn't see it here. I just realized thinking about hockey. So they're not supporting sponsoring the hockey team until Team Canada and the organization does something about the apparent um, kicking under the rug of behavior that is not acceptable by those companies.
Yeah. The statement from CEO Brian Porter for Scotiabank actually said, in part, today we've made the decision to pause our sponsorship of Hockey Canada until we're confident the right steps are being taken to improve the culture within the sport, both on and off the ice. Um, we also expect Hockey Canada to fully cooperate with the federal government's audit to ensure that the bank's sponsorship funds were used as intended. The time for change is long overdue, he said. We call on Hockey Canada to move with a sense of urgency in order to ensure that the game we love is held to the highest standards. Now, Hockey Canada also released their own statement saying Hockey Canada is on a journey to change the culture of our sport and to make it safer and more inclusive, both at the rink and in our communities. More needs to be done and done more quickly. So
But you can't
they're
say that and do nothing.
no, and that's the problem that we're running into here is they talk a great game, but their follow up is weak. So
Isn't this what we just talked about and what I was basically talking about with the National Hockey League and the way they treat Canadian teams, right? It's in the culture. It's absolutely in hockey culture. I'm sad to say, and this situation shows it, where hockey thinks it's above. The people involved in hockey who control hockey think it's above the rest of society and it can do whatever it wants, just like what happens, like I said, in hockey and under Bettman's rule. That's the kind of attitude they have. We're going to do what we're going to do when we're going to do it. And until somebody outside hockey points out something inside hockey, nothing happens. The only reason we had that big the big thing that happened with sexual abuse wasn't because somebody from hockey talked about it. It was because somebody who did something in hockey did it somewhere else, and somewhere else caught the guy, and they said he did it before in the National Hockey League.
And here's the thing: the only way to get an organization where behavior like this is baked into the culture is to go at it at the root, go after the source, cut off their money, make them starve, and realize that they need to change if they want if they want the funding back. It's the only way to do it. It's literally, this is gunboat diplomacy at its worst, but it's also the only way to affect change because those in the hockey community are so set that they need a major shakeup like this in order to get something done.
It's more about hockey. I'm going to agree with you, okay, with what you just said there, and try to verbalize it in a different manner. It's in the corporate culture, and by corporate culture, I mean the business
Yes.
of hockey. It and that business of hockey doesn't begin and end in the National Hockey League. It goes right down, all the way down to minor hockey. So it's this attitude that I find disheartening, where they think, again, I repeat, they are above the law, and they are not. And if something's going on in their corporate structure that is unacceptable outside of their corporate structure, it's time for their interior part of their corporate structure to be demolished and removed. Anybody responsible for helping to tamp down the situation that everybody's concerned about now with Team Canada, anybody involved with tamping that down should be removed from the organization. One, retired. I'm not saying he did anything bad, but I am saying he's gone now. So their old leader has left. Now they got to put up a new leader. But I think, you know, moving the deck chairs around isn't going to work.
No, and you're right, Frank. Just shuffling personnel to sort of cover up that fact is kind of like the Catholic priesthood moving priests. You're just shifting the problem somewhere else and not actually doing anything about it, but going, "Hey, we did something because he's not in this parish anymore."
Yeah,
Right?
it's
And
true, and
it's
also the way white Anglo-Saxon Protestants treated countries like India, and taught them the caste system, and that country, that world right now, is still can't get rid of what they were taught by the white Anglo-Saxon Protestants of Britain. They sent their culture everywhere. I agree. There are a lot of cultures out there, and a lot of groups that need to be called out to task. So yeah, it's true. Okay, so Canada should gain other countries and take a gas tax.
yeah. There are some people that are trying to send a message to oil companies, just saying, "Hey, and they're also trying to ease the burden on people by actually doing a gas tax holiday. So the UK, Italy, and Germany have lowered taxes. France has introduced a consumer rebate, and Japan has also introduced a subsidy to wholesalers to try to help ease the pressure on citizens at the pumps.
Yeah, and on top of that, I think they should revive the pipeline and then give it a date when it's going to get turned off. Right now, there's some discussion going on between, as you know, with the G7 going on, that the
Mm-hmm.
European countries are talking about getting gas from Canada. We produce a lot of it, and we just got to figure out a way to send it there. Unfortunately, it's far more costly to ship it in tankers than it is in a pipeline. So that's an advantage that Canada and the rest of the world can't overcome with Russia.
True, because Russia is connected. Unfortunately,
Right.
Canada is not.
So that's it. But we have to decide as a people in the world, the democratic people who believe that we the people are important, to use an American phrase. Um, we have to make some kind of sacrifice and have to somehow not feed money to people who use it to
Yep.
attack countries. So that's a decision we have to make. Environment Canada issues upgraded heat warnings for Metro Vancouver.
So again, this is a situation where they're looking at a potential heat dome. They're trying to tell people to try to keep everything as low key as possible. Don't move around as much. Try to conserve energy.
Yeah. And I'll just say a name, Cassidy Hutchison. She's the January 6th committee. People are calling her a hero. There are people also calling her someone who's not telling the truth. Um, the things that she said about Trump and the things that she heard. For me, the only thing I'll say is he knew there was violence on the horizon and he promoted it, pushed it, defended it, and let it happen for hours upon hours. I just want to know how much people, how many times people have to hear that the different ways we're hearing it, Aaron.
It is what it is.
Yep. Okay, he's Aaron William Freeland. I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you, Aaron.
Thanks, Frank.
And thanks to you watching Candid Frank live, Aaron, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For Candid Frank Live, other news, entertainment, and sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Ciao for now.